Okay, the YouTube worked. We go live on YouTube and on Facebook, and we're live over on Facebook too. And now I don't see any reason to wait the whole 5 minutes. We can get started. So I'm going to make that go away. Put myself on here. And I got a little show intro to do, and then I'll bring you guys up. And here it goes. From the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Cary, at the foot of Mount Belzoni, this is the Triangle Talk Show. Hey everybody, I'm Gary Pierce, back again for a live show. This is going to be episode 93. It's, I think, pretty much still an activist type episode. We'll see. Today is June 2nd, 2020. I'm going to call this the George Floyd Triangle. I'm not sure I even know what that might mean, but it's kind of what we're going to be doing, so we'll find out. We'll see if that really means something. George Floyd Triangle. The Triangle Talk Show is a YouTube show and a podcast for the Triangle area of North Carolina. We talk about anything we want to. We aim, more or less at things of interest to you folks here in the Triangle. I'm trying to use the word triangularians. I don't know if I'm going to ever make that work. Sometimes it's local. Sometimes we get a little bit broader. We are definitely unfair and unbalanced. We lean on the left side of politics when we get political. Maybe we'll do that. Never know. We have a live show at 4 o'clock on Sundays, and then, like this one, pops up whenever we feel like it. Website's triangletalkshow.com. Facebook group is the Triangle Talk Show on Facebook. Our Twitter is @TalkTriangle. Our YouTube address is still gibberish until we get to 100 subscribers. We are at 80. We're climbing. We're getting close. Please subscribe. The YouTube channel, which, since it's such gibberish, I can't tell you how to find it. If you go to the Triangle Talk Show website and click the YouTube icon, that will take you there. Or you could go to YouTube and just say, type in Triangle Talk Show. We're the only one. People are going to find you. So please subscribe. We'll get to 100, and then I can stop saying it's gibberish because I can make it Triangle Talk Show. And then I don't care whether you watch again or not. Okay, I do. I'd really rather have you watch. We're now also on TuneIn and Spotify. Don't know why anybody would go there to listen. Well, actually, I do. A friend of mine, I was telling him that we're available as a podcast, not just a YouTube show. And he says, well, he uses Spotify. And I said, well, perfect. We just ended up on Spotify. So today's show was suggested, inspired by my friend Elizabeth Crudup. And Elizabeth is here on the stream. Elizabeth, welcome back to the Triangle Talk Show. You also inspired yesterday's show.
Well,
so I think I'm going to make you an official producer.
Oh, no. Really, I think what's going on now is so pivotal and so critical that we needed an avenue to talk, and thank you for giving us that avenue to present the full story and not the sound bites we're getting out from the press.
It's been some interesting discussion yesterday, and I think based on who you've rounded up for us, that today is going to be an interesting discussion as well. I can put your title up here and make this official. And Elizabeth had to leave. Something like this tends to happen on live podcasts. Back already? Everything okay? Okay. Can you introduce the two people that you brought along to be on the show?
Well, one I've known for a little while now. One I just began following recently. I will start with Senator Floyd McKissick. We know him as Senator Floyd McKissick, but what I've learned about him, he has been an activist for civil rights his whole life. I don't think he doesn't know how not to be an advocate for civil rights. That's what his life is. And I've seen him in different arenas. I've seen him with suit and tie in the Senate. I've seen him out with the people. He is civil rights activism in North Carolina through and through, a legacy that is very important and very needed in this climate that we're going through right now. And then over the week, I'd seen Kerwin's name, but I really hadn't had any interaction with him. But then I saw on the weekend when they say men of standard, McKissick is there, but also Kerwin Pittman is right there. Men of standard. This is the standard. He said, this is our standard now. He set the tone for everyone. He said, this is our standard. We're no longer going to be begging you for anything. We're going to stand up and look you in the eye. No, I think he put it as no more kneeling down. We're standing up now, asking for our equality and our civil rights. And it was like, for me, it was like an echo of the civil rights struggle, the McKissick and Pittman voice. It's like McKissick has been yelling it this whole time, and Pittman has mirrored it, and the amplification of what they both have to bring into this situation, I think will really help propel us forward as a state into civil rights equality. We're going to budge forward, I think, with great information from what they both bring to the table.
And somebody has music playing.
There's a clock in my background that will end in about 2 seconds. You're correct.
Everything that happens in a Zoom conference will happen in this program. So,
yes,
yeah, it sounds fine now, gentlemen. It's great to have you on here, and Elizabeth, thank you for the introductions. A couple of things. For one thing, Senator McKissick, you are actually retired from the Senate.
Yes. Governor Cooper nominated me to serve on the State Utilities Commission, and my confirmation was approved by the Senate as well as the House. And around the end of the first week of January, moved over to the State Utilities Commission, where I'm serving at this time, having served 13 plus years in the Senate, and thoroughly enjoyed it in many respects.
Okay.
Great opportunity. It was there when Democrats were in the majority, and was there when Republicans were in the majority, and you have to learn to work effectively in both environments.
But we won't be lobbying you for legislation now, I guess.
Most people are still lobbying me for legislation, and I still try to help in whatever way I can.
I'm sure you still have a lot of friends over there.
Yes, a lot of friends. Yes.
All right. So in your honor, I actually put a collared shirt on. Normally it's just T-shirts here on the Triangle Talk Show. If you wanted me to wear a suit, you would have either had to just got married or just died, and then I do the suit.
Well, we'll see what we can do on that.
Not looking for either one of those to happen today. And you leave me with a bit of a conundrum, because normally it's a very, very casual show. You know, everyone just relaxes and we have a conversation, and I want to encourage you guys to just talk among yourselves. You don't have to worry about me being, a big shot host or anything, but I've got you as senator, and then, poor Kerwin is just Kerwin and Elizabeth is Elizabeth. So I'm happy with that if that works for you guys.
I go with the flow. So however you want to, it's your program, and I'm here at your leisure to share whatever way that I can.
Well, I just enjoy saying the word senator to somebody. I don't get that opportunity very often. So I'll go with that. And Kerwin, welcome to the Triangle Talk Show. It's good to have you here. Where are you? You're outside someplace.
Thank you for having me. I'm actually downtown, the city of Raleigh, at Capitol Grounds at the protest that's down here. So I was actually called in down here to just kind of assist and facilitate to make sure everything stays peaceful, as well as the mission and message continues to get amplified. So kind of excuse me, I'm down here at ground zero, so I'm kind of waiting for it.
All right. And so there is, organized protest again today. There's still going to be a curfew tonight at 8 o'clock. And I was impressed last night that the folks that were gathered down there, they didn't leave at precisely 8 o'clock, but I believe by about 8:30 they had all cleared out. So do you expect that to pretty much happen again tonight?
Yes, I'm expecting that to happen again tonight. And again tonight, we'll reiterate to individuals when it's about that time, the consequences of not leaving at that time would be a hefty fine of $1,000 as well as up to, I think, 60 days in jail. So, I'm hoping the crowd kind of dispersed at that time so we can kind of come off the lockdown here in Raleigh.
Were you downtown the past couple nights as well?
So the rally on Saturday, where 5,000 people showed up, I was actually the main organizer for that event, and so I've been down here ever since when it's followed. But I tried to leave at nighttime. I leave at nighttime because I know that majority of the people who are left at nighttime, like I said, I urge them to stay peaceful and to remain calm. So our mission will not be distracted, but of course you're always going to have outside agitators and outside opportunities come in and try to take advantage of different situations. And sometimes the mission of the actual protest, the reason why we're out here, can get kind of muddy with all the other different things that's going on.
That's been a lot of what people have been talking about is who was it there downtown at night? Was it protesters? Was it outside agitators? Was it just an element of the black community, even the white community, who just felt so angry that they couldn't help themselves and they needed to do some destruction? I guess that may be a place to start. What do you guys think?
I personally saw there were, and I think some of them, I think Kerwin didn't see them because they were behind him. There was a time Kerwin was talking and there was a row of people in black, I call them Al-Qaeda-like hoodies, that you could not see their eyes, and they had put smoky like soot on their arms from their elbows to their wrists. And their signs, I took a picture of a few of their signs. Their signs were kind of weird, and I just said, this doesn't feel right. And later on, I saw them over at the Capitol building. And we left early. We left at 7 p.m. on Saturday. So we left early. So I know for sure the fuel was there, but the match lighters were those guys who really were not interested in expressing the tragedy of what happened with George Floyd, the tragedy of the African American or the minority experience in America. They weren't there for that. They kept looking and trying to find somewhere, and then they would slink back. And I'm very sure later on, when people were posting the people who actually physically brought down glass windows, etc., it was very much of the same outfit, like black clothes, black hoodie. Not hoodie, but it was like a mask that covers everything except for the eyes. Even the nose is covered. You couldn't see the nose or mouth. Everything is covered except for a slit on the eyes, and you couldn't see their eyebrows or anything. So I know for a fact they were outside agitators who were now taking advantage of people that were already out of sorts, already grieving, already uptight, and that is really what happened. My perception of what happened all over the state. Somebody has a very coordinated plan because we were upset. Don't get it wrong. We are upset. We're extremely upset, but not to the point of the mass destruction that was initiated. If we're going to destroy something, we would have destroyed one of those 5,000 people. We didn't need there to be dark for that to happen. So it was always at nightfall, and these guys just come, they will start and hope that mob mentality takes over from a situation that they ignite. It was not the spirit of those who had initially gathered at all.
Kerwin, is that pretty much the way you saw it too?
Yes, and I'll just like to amplify on what she said and piggyback off of what she said. Everything she said was absolutely correct. So I received word before the event started that it would be outside agitators that would come in, which was happening all around the country, actually. I received it from credible sources. So I put marshals in place to kind of try to curb this, but the influx and the number, I was not expecting that many individuals to show up and to actually be left on the street. And so from the video footage that I'm receiving and a lot of people are sending to me of activity that happened after it got dark, majority of the people were busting windows and different things of this nature. It is initiated by these individuals dressed in black, which I told would be coming. So I received word that you had white supremacist group coming from as far as Portland, Oregon, was spotted down here in Raleigh, North Carolina at the protest on Saturday. So it was definitely a well-coordinated attack, I would say, to disrupt these peaceful protesters and turn, in my opinion, the mission into something else, two gains, looting, so financial gain, as well as disrupting the initial purpose behind us rallying, which is happening now. So everyone is focusing on property instead of actual people. And that is what we did not want to happen. So I'm kind of relieved that this curfew is kind of working out well, and this is not being continuously perpetuated because there's some in law enforcement field that believe that I organize individuals to actually lose, and to say that is actually disheartening when I'm bringing a group of people together who are hurt to express themselves in a peaceful form, the form that our people have known how to do for years. And so that's actually disheartening, but it's not going to stop the mission. I know we're going to have roadblocks when it comes to these things. And, the senator is probably a little more experienced when it comes to these things than I am. So he's probably a little more learned. And I might got to give him a call after the show, kind of off the record, and kind of get some advisory tips on that's how to steer this from happening like that. But as of right now, it's pretty peaceful protests out here right now. I don't know if you guys can kind of see the individuals behind me, so I'm kind of ecstatic about that.
Actually, Senator, I don't think we need to wait for you to give them some tips about how to handle things like that. What do you recommend?
Well, I mean, I think what the protesters are doing currently is the right thing. I mean, to peacefully assemble, to not represent some type of threat or violence. I think that it's excellent when they can come out to the streets and let people know of their concern, the gravity of their concern, to let them know that they stand with people all across America, regardless of race, regardless of profession. I've seen chiefs of police in many major cities come out and really talk about how deplorable it was to witness the videotape of George Floyd's murder, to be perfectly frank. I think that when you have a display of concern, a substantial, profound display of concern with people coming to the streets and participating nonviolently and in unison, I think it's powerful. I think it's wonderful. I think it speaks volumes about where we are today in America. I think that unfortunately that the unity that was there in that nonviolent protest somewhat disappeared in those instances where there was violence that was resorted to. That violence that was resorted to, I think, is counterproductive in terms of it allows people to forget about the purpose for which people came out, and that's about the racism, systemic racism in America. It's about the inequality that's part of our criminal justice system. It's about the tragic death of George Floyd. I don't want to see that forgotten. I don't want to see that, in some respects, not remain the focus of why people come out. And I don't want to see the conversation move to the rioting. And I think the rioting was unfortunate. I understand the frustration. I understand the despair. I understand how that can all be pent up. And I can understand how one would want to vent, because that venting is needed, that venting is necessary. But we can do that venting collectively together without us getting embroiled in looting stores. are breaking out storefront glasses. And many business owners throughout downtown in Raleigh, or throughout other communities here in North Carolina and the United States that are struggling themselves just to make ends meet because of the closings related to the pandemic which has occurred. And I don't want to see those people in some respect disadvantaged. Many of them share the same depth of concern about what happened to George Floyd, and more importantly, are concerned about racism in America. And they can be our partners in working together collectively toward bringing about profound and significant change in a way that it needs to occur. And so very, very badly. And maybe it took the writing to bring it to a point where people understood how the depth of frustration and despair that people were feeling. Maybe it took that for people to wake up a little bit. But I don't want to.
And another fairly typical, unfortunate example of what happens.
Really?
You're
I
back.
don't want to see that. The focus of discussion and conversation.
Okay. You disappeared for a moment. That's for the audio audience. That's what I was talking about. Senator McKissick disappeared for a moment, and he's back, and that sort of the nature of the Zoom conference calls. I don't want to focus on the violence anymore either. In fact, I'm almost sorry that I led with that, because I really want to talk about the feelings that have been engendered by the killing of George Floyd. And the rage is clearly felt throughout the Black community and a segment of the white community. But I think that most folks in the white community have a ways to go to understand what you guys feel. And I want to hear more about that.
I don't think it even registers. It is confusing, and it's confusing. They do not understand the ire, the depth of the ire. Many are surprised, like, where did this come from? That's the expression we get, like, where did this, but many have also found that it's mainly the younger generation, the generations that did not see as much segregation. Many people were coming out of segregation and trying to forget what a segregated life looks like and live life like, okay, we're all together. But then there's the 20-somethings who went to school together, who graduated from college and high school and were friends together. There's that group of people who absolutely are just as irate, regardless of their race. They're just as impassioned about not seeing what they saw with the 3 deaths that happened, George Floyd being the last one, the 3 consecutive. They don't want, that's not the world they want to inherit. That's not what they want for themselves. They know how to live with each other. They know how to dialogue with each other, and their lives cross over. But also there's people that go, it's not that bad. What are you complaining about? They don't quite get it. They don't quite get what the sin is. They don't understand, it, for lack of a better term, what the original sin was. George Floyd's death was just part of a really huge situation, that was getting even worse with the current climate that we have in terms of those who are politicians making policies right now. And many of the policies hurt minority populations. With all of that going on, with us having things we needed redressed, and there was nowhere to go get it checked, with the criminal justice system being completely a sham and a shamble. I actually call it a harvesting net of young lives, mainly minority, young Black lives being harvested to go and be part of a prison industrial complex kind of situation. That is just slavery, no other way to put it. And I was so encouraged. I felt like more justified to continue fighting for criminal justice reform when I saw so many people that said, yeah, they got me for 8 years. Yes, they had me for 5 years, but this is what I did. I educated myself. I got myself ready to come out into the world. And then there are policies. I think Senator McKissick can speak to the policies that have been enacted to make sure that you do not lead with your criminal record when you go look for a job. I think it was the Fair Employment Act. I think I remember McKissick working on that to help get that passed. And then there's also second chance programs that are coming in. And then there is all kinds of things trying to weaken the blow that is handed to many, many minority people when they enter the criminal justice system, a system designed to crush them and end them and keep sending them back into that slavery situation that they're put into in prison. And they're like, no, we're coming out of this stronger and better, and we're going on to be very productive citizens in our lives. And it is the eye of why should our children have to fight that so hard? Why is that a factor in their success or failure? You can walk a straight line completely, but all it takes is, a dark and stormy night and one patrol car, and your life is messed up, and you're back into the criminal justice system. I don't even want to go what happens with the criminal defense people, the people who are paid by the state for people who cannot afford attorneys. That is they're just rubber stampers on the harvest, But that's what I personally feel. And I feel that the hurt, I think I saw, all I can speak to is to the tears of the Black mothers, the African American mothers who were there. I can speak to their tears and their hurt. Their children have been killed. Their children have been incarcerated wrongfully. Their children have been beaten to a pulp in front of them. And they're told they cannot do anything, So we have a rogue police system, complete rogue police system. And we're tired. We want to live free. We just want to live our lives. That's it. Just want to live our lives as Americans, like every other American gets to live theirs.
And one thing I can simply say, I think Elizabeth was very articulate in expressing her thoughts and concerns and what so many people feel today. I don't think white America can really understand basically what it's like to be Black and to be prejudged based upon the complexion of your skin. And I've lived it my entire life. I'm 67 years old now. Have things gotten better during that time frame? The answer is absolutely yes. Are we where we need to be? The answer is absolutely no. You might not have segregation and apartheid the way you once had it back in the 60s. You have the Civil Rights Act that passed, and yes, you had the Voting Rights Act that passed and fair housing laws that passed. But when all those laws passed, think about it. Civil Rights Act, you're talking about going back to 1964. So now you can go eat at whatever lunch counter you want to eat at. You can go out there and stay in hotels and motels, and those barriers are taken down. And you had the Voting Rights Act passed. Yes, it passed, so it enabled people to vote without there being barriers to discrimination the way they once were. And the South was singled out because of all the historical practices they had, everything from poll taxes to literacy tests to anything to stop African Americans from voting. And yes, you went in there and had fair housing laws passed that said, yes, you can live where you want to. Before then, they could discriminate and tell you where to go. But think about that. That was 1964, 65, 66. And what did you see happen in 67, 68? You had 150 race riots all across America because people were still being repressed. They still didn't have access to the same opportunities, the same jobs. They were still burdened. And yes, what came from those riots was calls for law and order. And you ended up with that with the political mantra for the next decade. And you had people elected to office promising to bring about law and order, not unlike President Trump taking a page out of the playbook of the 60s and talking about law and order once again. And it's also bait trapping. It means something to those people that hear those words. But the challenge is today, There are people who still feel those same sense of hopelessness, the same frustration, the same alienation. Yes, we have blacks that have broken through all types of glass ceilings, that have all types of jobs. We have blacks that have been elected to the presidency of the United States, but remember, it was during the presidency of Barack Obama that you saw a resurgence in white nationalism and in hate groups. And what did it lead to? A complete backlash. We ended up getting President Trump elected that came in, that succeeded him. And yes, today we have to think about what it's going to take to turn this country around. There are like-minded people, progressive people, people who understand that racism and systemic racism cannot continue to exist the way it once did. And as many whites have been out in the streets, and in fact, in some communities, far, far more whites than blacks, standing up and fighting about what happened to George Floyd and the systemic racism that we face today. But those challenges we have to deal with. Those people that have been wrongfully incarcerated, we have to deal with. Yes, I passed legislation in the North Carolina Senate and the House and got it enacted that had helped bring about some criminal justice reform, but it doesn't go far enough. It helped expunge some of those criminal records. I know I had a guy one time approach me in Washington, D.C., and he said, Senator McKissick, I was living in Los Angeles. I went into a store one day to just make a purchase. I returned to my car, and as I was returning to my car, I had police officers apprehend me, put me in handcuffs, take me downtown, and charge me with bank robbery, and put me in a six-figure bond. It was a case of mistaken identity. Fortunately, they found out it was. But even after he was released, he had a record for having been arrested for bank robbery. So what did we do? We were able to go in there, and we're able to pass a bill here in North Carolina that basically said when there are charges like that, when you've been wrongfully accused as a result of mistaken identity, when you've been wrongfully accused and those charges have been dismissed in those circumstances, you can get your record expunged. We were very successful in doing it. And in cases of identity fraud, and be completely candid with you, I used identity fraud as a hook, because I'm sure that many people don't even understand the idea of African Americans being subject to mistaken identity, but they are all the time. But that didn't go far enough. Now there's this bill called the Second Chance Act that goes even further, that says that, when it comes to nonviolent misdemeanors, as well as those that are not sexually related offenses, you can go in there and get an automatic expunction of those records in North Carolina. That bill is passed in the Senate. It is over in the House. It's one vote away from becoming law. But it will give those people an expunction. Expunction is erasing that criminal history so they can get jobs that hold them back. They paid their debts to society. They might have served their time. And that's important. If they've served their time and paid their debts to society, they deserve a second chance so they can get an apartment, so they can live normal lives. They shouldn't have the scarlet letter embraced upon them the rest of their life because of a mistake that they made at some point in their lives. So yes, those records can be expunged for misdemeanor type offenses. And for those where charges were just automatically dismissed for whatever reason may be, they can automatically go away. You don't have to pay a lawyer $1,000 to do it. You don't have to wait 6 or 8 months to get it done. There's a lot that can be done. It's a lot that we are continuing to work on today. I could spend 20 minutes or a half hour telling you about it all, but I won't, because what this is about is thinking about heightening the level of awareness beyond the African American community, to get them to understand, to be sensitized, to realize that being Black in America is something that's a challenge. There's a level of stress, there's a level of anxiety that attaches to it. Where if you don't have on that suit and tie and you're walking down the street, people cross the street when they see you. If you don't look quite the right way and speak the quite way, people judge you. And even as a lawyer, and I've been a lawyer for 35 years now, but I can tell you, when I first became a lawyer, you didn't have the internet the way it was today, and I could talk to people on the other phone that, because of my diction and my grammar, did not know that I was African American. And when I showed up in their offices, for the first time to go through books and records and documents, and I might have brought 2 or 3 people with me that were paralegals that were white. They could go to the oldest, whitest male and go over to shake the hand and assume they were Mr. McKissick, when they weren't. There's implicit bias and racism that we all hold within us because we have grown up in a world that is not equal, that is not just. That implicit bias has to be addressed. It's being addressed in police departments and law enforcement agencies across America today. It needs to be involved in every component in our lives in terms of sensitizing people. I know I had a judge down in Charlotte who once told me about a case that came before him where there's 2 kids, one black, one white, both involved in the same criminal offense. It was a robbery at a McDonald's, some type of fast food franchise. And they both came before him. And of course, they were just trying to get bond to get out of jail on that particular occasion. White kid, they were ready to recommend that he get out that day. And for the black kid, they wanted to put on a substantial bond that his parents probably couldn't pay. And of course, the judge sat there and thought, well, what's the difference? If both involved in the same crime, the white was more complicit. Why should I release him to his parents and put the black kid under a bond that's going to require him and get money that he does not have? And he looked at the prosecutor and he looked at the lawyers, and nobody could understand the obvious disparity that was there. That's the implicit bias that has to be addressed. And I heard the judge, white judge, speak to that, who now gives seminars about it. I apologize for going on so long.
No problem. I heard an interview that one of the TV stations did with some of the folks that were down in Raleigh over the weekend. I think they were talking to a young white man and asked him if he was concerned when he got pulled over by the police, and he said no. I was pulled over by a Cary police officer maybe 2-3 years ago because someone in a car that was similar to mine had been involved in something, and so he saw my car. He didn't know who I was. He just had to stop me until he could make sure that it wasn't me. It was just a similar car. I was concerned. I didn't know what I had done. I didn't know why I was being stopped. I didn't think I had been speeding. I don't think I made a turn or anything like that. I was concerned. I was not concerned for my life. I was just worried about my record. You guys have to be afraid for your life every time. I think
Kerwin can really address like what are you seeing? What is the response you're hearing? And I know you deal with stopping recidivism. What is the message that you have to drum into people's heads about moving forward?
So moving forward, it's about basically developing concrete plans of actions. Dealing with recidivism. I'm the founder and executive director of Recidivism Reduction Educational Program Services. We call it REPS. My website could be reached at reps.net. But what we do is basically help people post-release parole, conviction, come back from incarcerated and be successful, productive citizens. We provide mentorship, as well as we do at-risk incarceration intervention programs. So what we're seeing now is a trend that's been going on across the country, which is really disheartening and a shame. To be honest, to say the least, when individuals have to pull out their phones and record when they're being pulled over, speaks volume to the scaredness that they feel from law enforcement. And so as a white male, I'm pretty sure when these individuals are pulled over, or female, they do not feel the same apprehension as the African American or the Black community feel when they are pulled over, because we know the likelihood of them being shot, to be honest with you, is slim to none versus a Black or African American male. And so what we do is we provide solutions for different problems and different things such as this, different things to do, as well as like pull your phone out. Make sure you already keep your driver's license in your door handle or either right there on top of your dashboard. It's just a multitude of steps and precautions we must take, and I must teach or educate, especially the younger generation, African American males especially, about how to really kind of conduct themselves when dealing with local law enforcement. And so we want to change that culture. So we want to see law enforcement reflect those of us who are in the community that they are serving in. You know, my motto and my thing is I always believe, and I say that individuals should go back to a older model style of policing in which they will put in African American communities, they will put older African American law enforcement officers in those communities, and they kind of knew the individuals from that community because they knew their mother or their father. So it was more of a sense of neighbor and community versus sense of a suspect and somebody who's an individual who I might need to arrest or detain or do something to, or he's going to do something to me. So we know right now the climate, the way law enforcement is, excuse me, y'all, they are scared. And the citizens are scared, and that just creates a bad concoction. When you have two sides that are scared, it is a bad thing. So we're about providing solutions. So right now we're coming up with solutions, de-escalation tactics, racial equity training. We have a list of demands for these protests that we're doing, and we want to get out to city council. And one of those demands is if these demands are not met, the top of the demands, if these demands are not met, then those who are in municipal leadership, those who are in executive leadership step down, as well as we would like to see more money invested into communities and healthcare in the African American community versus just continuously dumping money into the police department and militarizing the police department, what we're seeing right here in Raleigh, North Carolina. As well as we would like to see a lot of precincts that are put into the African American communities. We would like to see a good portion of those taken out, because once you over police a neighborhood, you have no choice but to go out and harass these citizens in these neighborhoods, and that's purely unacceptable. So what you're seeing now is the current climate of, to be honest, the younger generation coming out. So being boots on the ground and down here now, every day I'm seeing the younger generation. Yesterday it was a youth-led protest. These was individuals, who was 6 years old, 5 years old, and they was chanting, "Hands up, don't shoot, Black Lives Matter." I listened to some of them tell that they were scared that they might be shot coming out of the school door, that their fathers had been killed. And it was really disheartening, but yet I was happy to see the younger generation standing up and being trained and educated in the ways of standing up for yourselves. And so the video of George Floyd, in my opinion, was nothing more than a modern day lynching that we see played out. And it just ignited a powder keg that was already brewing within Raleigh, North Carolina, within the state of North Carolina, within the United States, in every state. So what you're seeing now is a response across the country of individuals, especially the younger generation, saying, no, we're not going to tolerate that. We're not going to go for that. In which they should speak up and stand up and speak out about situations that are occurring to them. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's happening to them. And individuals in my generation, I feel it's our duty to lead these individuals. Why? Because when we're elder and older, it's the younger generation that's going to have to make the decisions to take care of us. So if we don't start pouring into them right now, what to do right now, by the time we get elderly to where we're not capable of making our own decisions, we're going to be in a sad space and we're going to be in a sad place. So it's all about now finding solutions and coming to common grounds, pretty much.
Was the George Floyd video provide an opportunity that otherwise wouldn't have existed? And if there hadn't been a video, we wouldn't even have heard his name. It would just have been another statistic that got marked down in Minneapolis. The fact that we got 10 minutes of video of it, how critical was that, and how much of an opportunity is that, as sad as it is to have had to happened?
I think it's wonderful that we have the technology today to share it, because it's enlightening. Because if it had not been for that video and the video of so many others that has captured these horrific incidences, America wouldn't know. It'd be one person's word against another. And if the person happens to pass away, he cannot speak, or she may not be able to speak. And that's the sad thing. You know, it's unfortunate that it has taken advances in technology where people have video capacity on their cell phones to shock the conscience to understand how widespread and pervasive these types of circumstances are. I know you spoke earlier about, what it's like to be pulled over when you're in a vehicle. But, we had to pass legislation that they call driving while black legislation, just to get the data, just to get statistics. I had a bill a few years ago that updated it and refined it. And it's not just about blacks. They do a lot to Hispanics as well. I mean, we saw a case over in, it was right there on the border between Orange County and Alamance County, where it was a flea market where it was frequently attended by people in the Latino community. They would set up like 39 roadblocks in a year's time just to pull over Latino drivers, and then end up charging them with offenses. I mean, that was so unnecessary. So, I mean, we just have to understand that racism is broad and pervasive. It happens to African Americans. It's happened to people who are brown. If you don't happen to be white, you can be the victim of racism in this country, and that's just the dynamic, and that's just the way it is. But I can even remember at one point when I was about 22, thinking to myself, I want to get a nice car for myself so I can go drive it. I'm not going to wait till I'm 60 years old. You know what? I learned within 6 months that if I wanted to drive between where I was living at that time in Warren County down to the beach and through every little community in between when they didn't have Interstate 40 out there, I would get pulled over as I passed through each county based upon the vehicle I was driving just because I was African American. Not violating a single law. You could drive 3 miles below the speed limit and you were still going to get pulled. That's how pervasive this problem remains today in many areas. But I mean, I can't begin to tell you the episodes in my life that I've experienced.
And this is what gets me. This is what I think in this whole situation has baffled me. The power we give to our elected officials, the power we give to our governor, the power we give to our chief justice, the power we give to all these elected officials, the power we entrust upon them to wield. I think if it wasn't for social media, Governor Cooper is confused. He's lost. He doesn't know how to react because he doesn't want to look, but he thinks he might look bad to one side of the people, and he's just realizing just how great the hurt is in the African American community. That's been my observation. He has kind of tried to balance it out, which is not done successfully, really, but I think it's really just sinking into him how horrible it actually is. Before it was a situation he could ignore or he could gloss over. And now he's being made to make decisions because the person is black, because the situation is a black situation. He's not had to make those type of decisions. And he's like, is it for him to make the decision? And we go, yeah, you're the governor. You are the governor. You're the governor even over the racist situation. You are the governor. The language should be clear. It should not be just politically correct. It should be clear and condemnation and doing something so profound in support of those who are minorities in North Carolina. It has to be that profound. And he is treading like on eggshells, like, come on, you are the governor. You are the governor of the state of North Carolina. Don't just say you feel bad. You have the power to do something about this that is not imprisoning. Do something for an African American that's not imprisoning them. Okay? Do not do something that will lead them to be in that broken criminal justice system. Do something for the African American community, for the minority community specifically. You have no problem doing something for a different race, for your personal race specifically. the same ease you will do that with, he should also act for the minorities in North Carolina. We are citizens of this state also. We're not a second consideration. Our issues should have equal footing with issues of the white community. They should be equal footing. He should have, if he wanted to come out and march with the people yesterday, he should have come out and marched with the people. Senator McKissick, I know if you were there, you would be marching with the people. You'll be taking step for step with them, left or right, in solidarity. Don't come and run from one gate to the other and say, oh, I took part. No, sir, you did not take part. You are the governor. You have so much power behind you. Our votes have given you that right to come up and say, stop police force, unless you meet this particular educational standard, go home. Unless you cannot pass this psych evaluation, go home. If you have a problem with a race that is not your own, go home. He has that power. Don't just come tell me how you can go get a National Guard to come and get us. Bully for you. We are not the problem. The problem are the ones who are marching there with tear gas and throwing them at people who have nothing but a water bottle. A water bottle.
Well, I mean, I think what Elizabeth speaks of, the thing that I was greatly disturbed about yesterday was President Trump. And after he announced that he was a law and order president, proceeded to talk about early in the day telling governors that they had not done enough. And when, of course, when he said they hadn't done enough, he said they were not taking control of their communities. And of course, he went on to say that they needed to go lock everybody up and put them away for 10 years. That would solve the problem. Locking up people and put them away for 10 years does not solve systemic racism. It does not solve inequality. If they're looting, shoot them. That's against the law. If they're looting, arrest them. But you don't shoot them. You don't execute them on the spot. That's how we got to where we are today, killing people on the spot. That's insane. And of course, we do need good people. Like I think today I heard about a situation up in Camden, New Jersey, where the police chief knew that there were going to be people wanting to protest in his community. And he reached out to them. And when he reached out to them, they were talking about walking down the sidewalks. He said, no. You can walk down the streets. And then when they were coming to walk down the streets, he asked, may I join you? And he joined the protesters. And he joined them going down the streets. Or in Fayetteville today, where you saw police officers lined up with protesters coming toward them, and probably 40 officers got on their knees and on bent knees, showed a solidarity in understanding the grief and understanding the pain and understanding the inequality. That type of symbolism can go an awful long way in terms of giving validity and recognition to the fact that we're in this thing together and things have to change. And we can bring about change. We can bring about it in a profound, significant, transformative way. But it has to be a deliberate intention and consciousness to doing it. And it's not going to happen by saying, if the governors don't put enough National Guard on the street, I'm going to sit in the military. That's the wrong answer. That's the wrong way to bring about healing, to bring about recognition of the past, and trying to redress the ills that we face in this America today. And where did it come from? Let's be honest. 400 years ago, bondage and slavery that brought African Americans here. And they stayed slaves up until 1863 or so. I mean, and then it was only about 60 years or so that they could make progress before the Supreme Court slapped them back down. Plessy versus Ferguson, Supreme Court case that legitimized segregation in America. I mean, people tend to forget it, but after the Civil War up until 1901, we had 4 Americans elected to Congress that were African American in North Carolina. 4 of them. And most people completely forgot about it. Why? Because between 1901 going all the way up to about 1990 or so, it had been so long that people waited, and when you saw Eva Clayton elected, and you saw Mel Watt elected, they thought the first time blacks have been elected to Congress in North Carolina. Why? Because there have been 90 years that we regress.
Yeah. And
I want to see us regressing.
That early part of the 20th century is when those monuments were erected.
That's exactly right.
It wasn't.
All those Confederate monuments, that's when they came in. You're exactly correct. As symbols of bigotry, as symbols to say, stay in your place, and to honor the Confederate dead. And that's why those symbols need to come down today. They need to be relocated to historically appropriate locations where they can be looked and reviewed in their context, and not sitting out here on public grounds, in playgrounds and parks at our state's capital.
Yeah, I went down to the Capitol last year and looked at them hard for the first time in the 30 years that I've been here and said, what the hell is this? Why are these here?
And I had the same feeling many years ago up in Warren County when I first noticed one of those back around 1969 or 70, sitting there one evening and saying, looking at it and reading the inscription, and realized it was for the Confederate war dead. I said, well, why are we honoring the Confederates? They lost the war. Why is that here?
So
only to realize that many people that even graduated from high school then mistakenly thought that they were flying the Confederate flag because the South had won the war. What's that? What's that all about?
Yeah, I think they
true.
I think they still believe that. Trump is playing to his base, and I believe Trump is a lost cause. His base is probably pretty much a lost cause. Approximately equal number of people on the left side of the political spectrum are a found cause, or they pretty much understand. The white people don't share your absolute grasp of the situation because they haven't lived it, but we try to understand. But that's not enough. There's that group in the middle, that 20-30% in the middle that kind of gets swayed back and forth. It's the reason Trump can get elected, and then Barack Obama can get elected first. Those are the people I think that we're always trying to reach. Are they reachable? Does this get to them, or do they just look at the violence?
I believe that they are reachable, but that percentage kind of sways with the time. But being that we continuously amplify things like Breonna Taylor, the murder of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and as of late, George Floyd, and they see the reaction, I believe they can be swayed. But not only that, every year you have a younger generation stepping up who become eligible. And they do not carry the same sentiment that majority of the older generation carries. Like as far, even when it comes to the monument statues, you see a lot of the individuals out there who are doing it are the younger individuals. They're bringing them down. They understand the symbolism in them. They're not planning to the racist tenets. They want unity. They want peace. And so what I am seeing, it is more of an influx of younger generations for unity than actually for division and perpetuating racism, and which is a good thing. And this is just from boots on the ground in North Carolina. But I'm pretty sure it's happening all over the country. And so that's one of them things that we kind of have to pay attention to, is this shift that is occurring. If you look at these protesters, as somebody said earlier, some of them are made up of mostly white individuals. So I heard it was a March for Your Life, march in Holly Springs, and everybody was white besides 2 individuals. And the individual who organized the march or the protest was a little disappointed. And so one of my friends told him, like, you can't be disappointed. This is something that you guys must do. So we need not only unity and solidarity from the Black community, but we need it from the white community as well to stand up and say, yo, this is wrong, because they will listen more to you first before they listen to us. And so we have to just stand in unity and solidarity, and we're seeing that actually unfold right now. When I come to these protests, it's beautiful to see a mixture and a different sea of different faces. I love it. I love to see this.
Senator McKissick, some of the solutions are going to be political solutions. Not all of them, but a large number of them are. And you have lived in that environment for a good long time. And I imagine you're pretty frustrated at how hard it is to make progress.
It's challenging to make progress. It's been particularly challenging since 2011 when Republicans came in and took control of the North Carolina General Assembly, and they passed some of the most regressive legislation that we've seen, turned the hands of time backwards several decades when it came to voting rights. In particular, I mean, cases that go all the way up to the Supreme Court that before they got turned down. I mean, because they were sitting here trying to gerrymander our state with surgical precision, because they were out there trying to repress people's right to elect a candidate of their choice. So, I mean, it's challenging. I mean, I think the most important thing that people can do today is to vote for candidates of their choice, candidates who are going to stand up for them, candidates who are going to subscribe to their values, candidates who will have the political courage to understand that regardless of whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, or whether you are unaffiliated, that when it comes to issues like systemic racism, they need to be addressed. When it comes to inequality in our judicial system, they need to be addressed. I mean, some of this legislation that I have gotten passed dealing with dysfunctions, we went and we worked across the political aisle, Democrats and Republicans, to get it done. And we can, and we're capable of making substantial progress. But it takes a conscious, deliberate effort to do so. And to understand that when it comes to African-American businesses and things of that sort, we need to sometimes make special efforts, and other disadvantaged businesses for others, to help them, to give them a leg up, to make sure that there's access to capital so they can go out and do what's necessary to grow, to expand, and thrive, to offer jobs, to become part of that political mainstream or that economic mainstream that America's all about. I believe and I know that it can happen. I've seen profound and substantial change occur during my lifetime. It's just that we haven't gone far enough. And from time to time, that political pendulum will swing, and it will swing forward and it can swing back. We just got to make sure with this next election cycle that people of good conscience and beliefs all get out together, all try to elect those candidates of choice that will make that pendulum swing forward once again, not just here in North Carolina, but all across America.
So we do have a new set of maps. They're not as badly gerrymandered as they have been for a decade. They're still gerrymandered. They're still going to give a Republican advantage. In the U.S. Congress, we can pretty much predict we're going to pick up 2 Democratic congressional seats. Because they're still gerrymandered, they just gerrymandered 2 more of them into relatively safe Democratic districts that weren't there before. The North Carolina House and Senate, it seems to me let's go a little bit more ambiguous. What do you think that those new maps are going to do for us?
I think they're better maps. I think the Senate will probably pick up a member in Mecklenburg County. I think they'll pick up a member in Wake County. I think they're more competitive swing districts that can go Democrat or Republican, depending upon who gets out to vote. But the critical thing is amassing the critical resources to get out and vote. And that means getting people registered to vote, to get people who are already registered to vote, to get them to the polls, and to likewise not just use our energy and our efforts, but to contribute financially to make that possible. So these candidates are viable candidates and can appeal to a broad cross-section of voters and get their message out. You can have some really great people, but if folks don't know they're running, you got a problem, particularly these legislative races that are down ballot. People are going to be concerned about the president this year. They're going to be concerned about the governor this year. They're going to be concerned about the U.S. Senate this year. The other races are down ballot. They're less visible. It takes more concerted effort than ever to bring them and elevate them to a level of consciousness that people understand they are just as important, if not more important in some instances, to their daily lives on a day-to-day basis.
You're reading my mind, because I was going to ask about that. I would put a small amount of money on saying that most people in North Carolina don't know who their state senator and senator and representatives are.
I
think you're probably correct. Go ahead, Elizabeth. Yeah, I didn't mean to.
And that's what I kept saying. We have to be engaged. We have to be plugged in to the system, because that is where the power lies, into who we send into Raleigh or Washington, especially into Raleigh. That is where the power lies. We need to be plugged in to know who our state elected officials are, because the laws they enact affect us directly. And immediately, we cannot just talk from the side. We have to commit to vote, and we have to stay engaged in the process, so we can, put people in that will be will know that we're turning certain policies into platforms. Certain directions is where the state is going. Many people just show up to come and vote. I'm like, do you know whether it's a Democrat or do you know who you're about to go vote for? Do you know what they're going to do when they get there, or what they hope to do when they get there? Many people don't know. And I'm like, please stay engaged. Stay engaged, because I guarantee you, until recently, most people did not know what David Lewis was doing in Raleigh. They did not. In Harnett County, oh no. You did not know. They just did not know what was happening. They're like, oh no, he's so nice. He come, like, please go and see what he's see with your own two eyes. Don't let me come and tell you about it. And that's I think that's what the African American community has relied on a lot. Someone going to come back and tell them about it. No, there's enough technology now for all of us to know for ourselves and make decisions for ourselves, left, right.
Do you guys? Are you frustrated? Do you feel that the local media, especially the TV stations, don't cover local politics well enough? I don't see local representatives and senators on TV very much. I
think the local media has their own agenda. And number two, the reporters want to keep their jobs.
What's that agenda?
They have their own agenda of ratings. What can I say to get the biggest bang?
Okay, so if they cover that stuff, no one's going to watch.
And that's the thing. I'm like, how do they know no one's going to watch? Let them cover it. I mean, they try and cover it a little bit more, but cover it in a way that's more digestible to the public. A way that's more digestible to the public. That would really help. I know there are many shows and all that kind of stuff. People are starting to engage in it more. I think with the success of things like, I think the Young Turks started out as just young people running them out, and now they've become great influencers on the opinions.
You're talking about a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Very popular and pretty left-wing YouTube channel.
But I remember when they started, they were just literally, hey, we're mad, we got a camera, we're going to talk.
They started like me.
Yeah,
except madder.
Yeah, they stayed engaged. They stayed engaged in the process, and that's all I keep saying is stay engaged in the process. The press will not cover. I think with the protests, I literally saw. I think it's channel 11. Brian Mims, WRAL. Brian Mims running away from people because they were people of color. They weren't trying to hurt him. They weren't trying to do anything, but he just felt, I'm in the middle of a march and it's dark and there are these dark people coming towards me. I'm going to run. And I was like, really? Really? This reporter is going to now report how people are being violent. Why? Because they walked in his direction in the dark. And he didn't realize the picture that painted. I'm like, these guys were just high-fiving each other and running down the street by themselves. They didn't even care he was there. But because it's dark, it's after 7 in the evening, and he's not African American, and he's standing in the dark. Dark people are coming. He's got to go. He's got to pack his bag, pack the camera, and run and flee from these guys walking towards him. I said, really, really, and this is supposed to be an unbiased reporter, unbiased, just reporting what's going on. We do not get the real story unless we stay engaged, we tell our story, and we keep in mind that no one can tell our story like we can. And
I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. We have to stay engaged and tell our story. So dealing with the media, I know they're going to do whatever it takes to get the ratings. Even as far as on the night of Saturday, the initial protest, you actually had a reporter out here, and I got a picture of this. He was doing a live interview, I guess, but he had an actual smoke machine beside him and was releasing smoke out of the smoke machine like he was standing in some smoky scene that they just bombed, and just to amplify the chaos and the terror and the danger. And when I got the photo, I wasn't surprised at all. But we definitely, the beautiful thing about Facebook and Facebook Live, social media platforms, it allows you the ability, anybody who subscribed to it, to tell the story and to get a more accurate standpoint. To get these videos out here, like George Floyd, different things of that nature. So we definitely have to be mindful of the media, as well as with media, it's the producers that kind of have the power. So whatever producer that's on that shift, and however their biased opinions may be or their neutral standpoint may be, what shows, what airs, what get the most airtime, it will reflect that. And so politics is just not more important to them when it comes to showing local officials and what's going on with local officials and getting people engaged. And I don't know if that's particularly because their affiliation, the producer's affiliation, to whatever political party or what, but I know that the anchors pretty much do not have too much power in crafting. I mean, they have the power to craft their story, but at the end of the day, they have to submit to the producers, and they have to agree to spin it and how they're going to spin it, and what say, no, you have to go back and reshape this and different things of that nature. So I'm glad that we have social media now to tell our story and tell our narrative from an unbiased standpoint and just get the truth out there. So it's a beautiful thing that we have that, but we definitely have to be mindful of the media and who's affiliated to who and who will air what. Yeah.
Well, as I said at the beginning of the show, we are definitely unfair and unbalanced. Don't even try for it.
I might simply add to that is that I think that in terms of the major networks, like the NBC affiliates, ABC affiliates, CBS affiliates, they all are going to cover about the same thing in every newscast. It's just a matter of, and they have news directors and producers who decide each day based upon the information they have about what's available to cover, what they can cover. But you got to understand, they got to cover a little bit of local news, they got to cover national news a bit, they got to cover sports, and they got to cover the weather, and they got to do it roughly in about 22 minutes. All right? That's about it. That's the only thing they're going to give it when you take the commercial time out.
Yep.
And, maybe if you're lucky, it's a little bit more than that. But, when I'm interviewed, I know that what I have to say, I must say it and make it sound coherent in 22 seconds. Because that's the only thing you're going to use. Yep. I mean, that's about as long as your soundbite may be if you're lucky. And if you can't say it in 22 seconds, it won't be used. It won't be categorized. Now, you have a better chance if you're talking about Spectrum, the cable company, because they have a little more leeway, a little more flexibility. And I find it in some respects, they're better at covering some of the local news, and they can run things more frequently. And they're not as sensitive when it comes to time. And they have programs like Capitol Tonight that come on each and every night. They cover nothing but the General Assembly or things going on a statewide basis, as well as an opportunity to cover some local things. So, I mean, I think that if you look at people, those local news channels, you are better off than you are looking at the national companies, because their time limitations, you take out the sports time, the weather time, a little bit of national news, and you got what's time left of local and state, it's not very much. If you got 4 minutes of every broadcast, 5 minutes on a good day, that's about it. You can't get a whole lot into that time.
One thing I've been disappointed at is the cable supposed news stations, which have all the time in the world, still don't take advantage of that. They prefer talking head programs like this. I can't go cover news. I don't have a news staff. They prefer talking head programs like this with pundits. They maybe introduce a little bit of news to the beginning of it, but then it's all discussion. And clearly nothing wrong with discussion, because that's what we're doing here. But they have the opportunity to do that news, and they don't take advantage of it.
Well, I mean, I can think of events over at the General Assembly where you send out notices for press conferences, and you might have the major networks listening in to the audio, but the cable will be the one there actually filming it, and then, I mean, but sometimes things are off their radar screen. You talk about issues dealing with Medicaid expansion in North Carolina, they don't really want to hear about it. They've heard enough about it. You talk about the Equal Rights Amendment when it was an issue, they really aren't there to cover issues dealing with the Equal Rights Amendment. I can go through a half dozen issues that are necessary, that are topical. You talk about some criminal justice reform issues, they probably won't show up. You got David Bluff there from Obama's White House, they'll show up. You got somebody there who might have been involved with Coke Industries, they may show up. But I mean, when you start talking about simply things that are substantive, they're unlikely to be there to cover it. They got a lot more to cover. And they pick and choose what they really want to feel is significant, topical, and what people will gravitate to. What the typical viewer will find entertaining or have interest in.
Yeah. So, a plug for podcasts, we can do those sorts of things, but we don't get the audience. But I'm working on it.
I'm going to have to leave shortly, unfortunately.
Yeah, I heard your clock go off for a second time, so I know we've been going for
that means that we have been going for an hour, 15 minutes approximately.
Yes. So I think we can wrap things up here. The last thing I'll mention is that on the show that I did last night, that Elizabeth also produced, we sort of ran up to the point of saying, well, this thing with George Floyd, as much attention as it's getting now, as much reaction as it's getting now across the country, is only going to move things forward a little bit. There have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of incidents across the United States over the past couple hundred years, as long as the country has been here. I looked it up on Wikipedia for incidents in the U.S., civil unrest, and it turns out there are lots of them, some very big, but most of them very small. This one, I think, will end up being one of the very big ones, and I would like to see it move things forward a lot. My expectation is, like all the others, this will be over in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and maybe in legislation, in public consciousness, it's going to move things forward just a little bit. Maybe a little bit is the best we can get from things like that. Thank you guys for being on the show. Senator Floyd McKissick Jr., now in the Public Utilities Commission. So I want to talk to you about my electric bill. Can I give you a call?
By all means.
Is that what you're there for?
We're free to listen.
Appreciate your being on the show. If you run into my Senator Wiley Nickel, I've been working on getting him on the show. I
know Wiley quite well.
Yeah, he keeps saying that he'll be on the show, but we've never been able to quite connect. Let him know I don't bite. Tell him, by the way, tell him that Gary Pierce, it's the other Gary Pierce, so he doesn't confuse me.
I will let Wiley know. So Senator Nickel, he has his heart and his values in the right place.
Yeah.
And I know that he would love the opportunity when his schedule allows to be a part of your podcast.
I'll keep beating on him.
But until he meets Elizabeth, he might not show up.
Elizabeth, help me out.
I'm notorious now.
Kerwin Pittman from Reps. Thank you for being on the show. Appreciate your input, and Elizabeth, thank you for basically producing this episode and bringing some juice to the show that I am unable to do myself, at least at this point. So appreciate it very much.
I thank both of them very much. As you can see, they're both extremely busy men. Thank you for taking the time to come out and speak, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Privilege and honor.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to say goodbye to the live stream. I have to hold for just a second because YouTube cuts me off too fast if I push the button and stop talking. I get